is different than let me just talk and ruminate about the past.
Right.
Cognitive behavioral therapy, you're like, okay, this happened in the past, but this is the action that I'm going to take to move my life forward. And so that's how coaching is. We talk about insight plus action, we do look at the past, like really the textbook answer to say, how is coaching different than therapy is coaching is where are you, where do you want to be, and how do you get there? But one of our core competencies in coaching is helping people to understand themes and patterns.
Welcome to AFO Wealth Management Forward, a podcast powered by Arrowroot Family Office that's at the intersection of accounting, wealth management, behavioral finance, technology, and entrepreneurship. We help accounting firms and financial advisors grow their practice by going beyond the numbers as we learn from industry leaders and subject matter experts to discover the secret to their success. A podcast that highlights everything from the transformative power of AI to embracing the human-first approach of behavioral finance to help you understand the psychological and emotional relationships to money and meaning. Here is your host, Rory Henry, director at Arrowroot Family Office and author of Holistic Guide to Wealth Management.
All right. Hello, everyone. I have another great guest joining us today. She is the Chief Enlightenment Officer and Executive Leadership Coach at Conscious Public Accountants. She's a professional certified coach. She holds a master's in leadership studies. She delivers training and keynote conversations for organizations that aspire to develop the whole person. We're here to talk about coaching, leadership. We'll probably dive into mental health as well. So without further ado, let me introduce my friend and returning guest, Amber Setter. Amber, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be back. And it's even nicer to be here when I've met you in person, which is always a cool experience. So delighted.
Yes, I am excited to have you with us again. I had a great time when we first spoke. I know we've hung out at some conferences here, and I absolutely love your mission because it aligns well with the work that we do in our human first approach. So, before we kind of get started, I want to give the audience just a brief background again on who you are, and then let's talk about your mission on really how you're helping accountants out there become more whole human beings.
Yeah, I'll speak a little more to who I am, sort of the career progression and the mission because it's informed by it. So I did start my career as an accountant. I earned a bachelor's in accounting and worked in the area of tax primarily, and really kind of early on realized that I love the development of people. I was like going to all the Beta Alpha Psi meetings and talking about careers in accounting. And yet I really loved the firm I was at. And so I approached the firm about, can I be a campus recruiter? And so I went into that role where you're really just talking to people about careers in accounting and you're onboarding people and helping them early on in their careers. I went back to school and then did a master's in leadership studies. And that just blew me open because there were such amazing topics about organizational change and what's going on inside of me that informs how I take up my leadership or not, and how do I inspire others or I don't. And I just was like, wow, like I learned all this technical stuff that was good as an accountant, but I didn't learn a lot about the humanity. And so that really inspired the mission that I've been on since that time. I went on to work in a learning and development role within a firm, which is all the compliance that you need to do, as well as there's other competencies you need to do your job. And then became a professional coach, I guess, about 12 years ago. And so I really believe that it's so important to be a whole, healthy human, that we don't need better, competent accountants. Like, yes, you need to stay up to speed on what's going on with technical changes. I don't want to entirely throw the baby out with the bathwater, but we don't want to neglect, how we take care of ourselves and taking time for introspection and reflection. And what do I really want out of life? And, where do I want to be in 5 to 10 years? And, oh, I want to be retired. I probably should, think about my next generation of leaders. So we're all about the whole human at our firm that is doing the coaching and the non-technical domains of the profession.
Yeah. Oh, you're speaking my language, Amber. And I always talk about how we need to move from the technical really to that transformational. And in the human first approach that we advocate for is looking at that whole person, the many dimensions of their well-being. I always quote Dr. Peggy Swarbook, who has the 8 dimensions of well-being, and looking at, not only our financial, but our spiritual, our emotional, our intellectual well-being. And really that makes up who we are. And I think in the accounting profession, the financial advisory profession, we're so sometimes focused on meeting our numbers, right? Meeting our deadlines, meeting those KPIs, that we kind of don't look at the other aspects of who we are, our physical health as well. So can you kind of maybe touch on how you're helping financial practitioners out there really look at that whole self and how they can start optimizing the other dimensions of who they are?
Are you an accountant looking to generate more revenue and secure your future success as automation and artificial intelligence revolutionize the accounting profession? If so, contact us at AFO Wealth Management Forward. We specialize in helping accountants and advisors just like you build a custom brand to pinpoint your optimal clientele, generate highly qualified leads through our data-driven digital marketing, and execute wealth management growth services to bring more value to your firm and your client's life. Our strategic approach to branding, marketing, and wealth management is carefully tailored to attract ideal clients, increase customer retention rates, and cultivate lasting relationships with clients across generations. Visit wealthmanagementforward.com to book your free consultation to find out how you can elevate your practice.
Yeah, I mean, there's, I guess, a useful way to go about answering that is how people come to coaching, right? So
Yeah.
what's the driver and then what do we do? So in a private client setting, meaning someone hires us privately, their employer hasn't done it, there's usually something not working.
Yeah.
It's not like my life's great, I want to work with a coach. It's usually like I'm burned out, I'm overwhelmed. I'm hearing a lot in the space, like younger equity partners, like, how am I going to do this 20 more years? Like, I don't even know. Right. And
Yeah.
so they're usually coming with some kind of rub. And at a simple level, it's helping people to understand what's going on with them and what they're even feeling. And then
Right.
it's, where do I want to be in the future? And when you're in a state of massive burnout, it's really even hard to know, where do I want to be
Yeah.
in the future? Because you can't even discern where you're at. So what sort of dimension we're looking at? Is it the emotional? Is it the mental? Is it the spiritual? We are going to introduce theory like that. I really like the energy project that just has a 4 domain model.
Hmm.
Um, but we meet each client where they're at. Some really need to work on the physical. Am I taking care of my physical self? Am I getting enough sleep? Am I eating healthy? Some need to work on the mental. Am I taking breaks to strategize, or am I
Yeah.
just reacting to immediate things? And I love that you talk about spirituality. I think there's a way in which we've been taught, like, you can't talk about religion in the workplace, but I
Hmm.
really see spirituality is, and especially for people who work in professional services, they're often like, how do I help the client? How do I help the client? And I
Yeah.
think the more you're in tune with you being of greatest service to the world and the universe, the better the client is served, right? And so it really is an act of a very deep reverence for the work and the client when you're aligned to spirit. And not a lot of people talk in that language.
Yeah. That's almost putting the best interest of the client first by putting on your oxygen mask on first, right? So you can become your whole human being, and then you can advise them properly. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Well, I want to kind of take a step back because I know you talk about coaching and you talk about what coaching is and what coaching isn't. Can we kind of take a step back and define what that is? Because I think a lot of people maybe have a misunderstanding what coaching is, Amber.
Yeah, and they do. And so it's okay, because coaching as a profession in the way that I do it is really young. In fact, I think it wasn't until the 1980s when the International Coach Federation was formed. And what I always find to be interesting about that is the ICF as the acronym, they're sort of the gold standard, right? So we know there's a CFA, a CFP, a CPA. There's
Yeah.
actually coaching credentials. And the coaching, the ICF was pioneered by two accountants who went into the coaching profession. So as you can imagine, they went in, they're like, there's no code of ethics, there's no like
Yeah.
supervision, there's no experience. Like, let's get this, organized. But in that methodology, what is very much a misunderstanding is people believe that I, as a coach, am giving advice. And that's not what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm really helping the client. I'm assuming if I was coaching you, Rory, I would assume you're the expert on your life.
Yeah.
I'm there to create the space for you to stop and think about what's keeping me up at night. Where do I want my life in 5 to 10 years? How am I getting in my own way? I actually just had a call prior to this with a client, and I can't tell everything because it's a confidential experience.
Yeah.
But one of the things we talked about, there's this person's feeling challenged in the workplace. And I was like, the thing that that person really needs to work on that's driving working too many hours, it doesn't matter what's going on in organizational life or what colleagues are doing or not, like that person's ineffective behavior is going to carry them wherever they go. So that's the thing that they need to work on and get honest with themselves. And only they know how to, identify and notice, why am I sitting in my chair for 12 hours a day? What's going on? Like, I'm not chained to it. And so that's where the breakthroughs come, when people start to really do their own introspection. And then I help them become accountable for the change that they desire.
Yeah, it's so funny that, Amber, we're talking because I talk about this in the book. There was a McKinsey study that said by 2030 that we're really going to just become integrated life and wealth coaches, and, helping people with their taxes, their financial planning, their estate planning, their financial wellness. And it's so funny. And I see the work that you're doing, and really, as technology continues to advance and AI does a lot of the technical work, it's this stuff that you're talking about, and then I espouse in the book as well, is really asking those questions and then helping people uncover, where they're at, do that introspection. For instance, that person, I don't know who that person is, obviously, they may be a people pleaser, right? And that would take, that would follow them to any other problem or challenge that they're having. So I think it's asking those right questions, and then helping people really uncover what their decision-making process is, or what happened with regard to how their actions are affecting their issues in the workplace or in their lives. There's a question somewhere in there, Amber.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think as I hear you share that and you talk about the McKinsey study, what it reminds me of is one of the simplest coaching hacks, so to speak, that anyone listening to this can do. When a client comes to a coaching session, of course, how are you? What's been going on? What's important to share? And then the next thing is, what do you want to get out of our conversation?
Yeah.
And if every advisor spent a good, solid, sometimes 5 to 10 minutes helping people to understand what they really want out of a meeting with someone else, it is powerful, because it might be like, well, I want advice on, what to do to set my grandson up for success. That's not enough. You gotta
You gotta dig deeper.
What does success mean to you, right? What does success mean to your grandson? Tell me more, and dig a little bit deeper. And so I'm actually right now in the process of going for my highest credential in coaching. We have 3 of them. And that's where I keep getting dinged. Like, I need to spend so much more time with the clients up front to really drill down. And the act of them drilling down is them going, what do I actually really need? Yeah. What do I really want?
Yeah, it's so funny. It's where you can continually ask why. Well, why? Why is that? Why are you saying that? Why are you answering that? Because a lot of times people come to us with a situation, call it situational planning, but that's just a surface level issue. It really goes in deeper. Like, I want to be able to provide for my grandkids because, I didn't have that growing up, and they suffered a lot of, pain, in my childhood. I don't want my grandchildren and my children to suffer the same way I did. So it's asking those deeper level questions to really get to the root of the issue. And then you can be able to provide the advice to help them optimize their decision making.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about leadership here, because I know you have a master's in leadership skills. Can we talk about, first and foremost, what leadership is and what it isn't?
Yeah. So I always go back to a book that I read in 2005 when I did my master's in leadership. And this is, by the way, my shameless plug. Our website is conscious.cpa, but I do have a section of recommended reading because I'm an avid reader and I love books. And this one's on my top 5. So the book is called Leadership on the Line. And the way that the authors define leadership is that it is the ability to take a group through an adaptive challenge.
Mm.
And that's different than a technical problem. A technical problem is something like, I got a flat tire, right? Like, we know what a flat tire feels like when we're driving. We know the sound, we know how to solve it and diagnose it. We can phone a friend,
Yeah.
watch a YouTube video. An adaptive challenge is COVID, right? How do I have everybody return to the office? Do I not? I don't know. An adaptive challenge is, years ago, the IRS was sending notices out saying, we're going to tax clients on cryptos. We're going to tax you, but we don't know how, right? And I remember hearing a really high level tax professor say, well, they're comparing crypto maybe to livestock, and maybe that's going to be the treatment. Like, crypto never existed. So really, leadership is not just a position or a title. It's taking people through something that hasn't existed before. And I think that's such an important way to think about it, because when you're doing that, that's where a lot of the beauty of coaching is. How am I building internal capacity to be with ambiguity and
Yeah.
to be with complexity? So when COVID happened, where I saw things not go really well, is a lot of CPA firms, other employers too, they got scared about what could happen. And so they used COVID. They went and either used it as an excuse to let people go that they hadn't done that. I saw firms that cut people's compensation 5 to 10%, everyone's cut. But what happened was all those firms made more money than they had ever made. And
Yeah.
so you're like, but it came at a cost. People didn't feel safe at a time when the world wasn't safe. So then we have the Great Resignation.
Yeah.
So, when you take a step back, and this is another metaphor I got from that book, they talk about how kids, you as a leader, get a balcony perspective. Imagine you're in
Yeah.
a drone and you pull back and you look
Yeah.
down of like, okay, what's really going on? And can I just hold steady through the complexity and the ambiguity before I go making decisions because I'm scared and I'm just reacting to fear?
Yeah, it's so funny. We always talk about, we have the 4 R's that I utilize in our practice here, where a lot of people make reflexive decisions. Stock market went down 20%. Let me sell all my stocks, right? But the key thing is being mindful, understanding that stimuli is coming in, that you're making an emotional response, to pause, reflect on your long-term goals, reflect on your values, and then you can reframe by looking at the different alternatives, right? The different scenarios that you can go down, and then you can respond accordingly using your prefrontal cortex. So that seems like a way in which we can help people better react to situations or outside stimuli when there's so much unknown or complexity in a situation.
Right. And when I hear you share that, it's like it really gets down to self-care.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who don't regulate their nervous system or even realize that they're in such a reactive state. I mean, even in my own life, last year, I moved to a different part of San Diego, but I kept my daughter in her old school. And as a result, I was driving on the 5 freeway, which if anyone's been in Southern California, it's
Nightmare.
not good for the nervous system.
No.
If you want some anxiety, drive on the 5. And so I was driving on the 5 like 45 minutes each way, and I didn't even realize how grumpy it made me, how agitated it made me. It was just like something I was doing in life that was terrible. Now, this school year, I don't have that. We drive 12 minutes. I have a sauna. I have a cold plunge. Like, life is very different.
Yeah.
And so it's the work of a leader is so much I don't think people realize how important self-care is as a leader. Adequate rest,
Yeah.
eating food that are more natural, that don't have chemicals that mess up your system, because you can't get to a place of being reflexive and calm when you're not just taking care of, what I call the meat bag, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
soul is in this contraption that we have to
Right.
attend to.
Yeah. It's so funny. Like getting the basics right will get you so far along. Like I said, eating right, sleeping right, right? Exercising. When we do those things, we can then meet, in these new challenges more effectively. And I'm a big fan of positive psychology, solution focused therapy, Amber. I think there's the opportunity for us to really, instead of looking at the past and harping on the past that may have not gone right, it's really looking at the successes we have to past challenges to really help us overcome new challenges. Do you do that type of work with the clients you're working with?
Yes. So clients who've worked with me have said things kind of like what you're referring to might be also called like cognitive behavioral
Yeah,
therapy,
therapy. Yeah,
which is different than let me just talk and ruminate about the past.
right.
Cognitive behavioral therapy, you're like, okay, this happened in the past, but this is the action that I'm going to take to move my life forward. And so that's how coaching is. We talk about insight plus action, we do look at the past, like really the textbook answer to say, how is coaching different than therapy, is coaching is where are you, where do you want to be, and how do you get there? But one of our core competencies in coaching is helping people to understand themes and patterns that they have.
Patterns. Yeah.
And patterns come from the past. So you have to kind of look at that, like what is driving, I'm a people pleaser, or I'm a
Yeah.
perfectionist, or I'm distant sometime. You look to the past, but then it's like, okay, what am I going to do? Now that I have this insight, what do I want to do differently to create a new outcome for myself? So absolutely, we're looking at growth and new behavior all the time.
Yeah. Now, if you're someone out there listening, right, you feel stuck, like what are some best practices to just get started? Do you start journaling? What are some ways in which we can kind of get out of our own way sometimes and start helping us, solve some of the issues that we're having in our life?
Yeah. So think about consciousness precedes choice and choice precedes change.
Yeah.
So,
Self-awareness.
in order to have that awareness and that consciousness, you've got to figure it out. For some people, it's journaling and like naming their feelings and writing it down.
Yeah.
For me, what really helped me was hot yoga, right?
Ah,
Because it got me to do a lot of breathing and regulate my nervous system and notice my patterns of thought. For some people, it's time out in nature. It's really tuning out all the noise of social media and other people's opinions and who you should be in the world to uncover what's not working, what
yeah.
do I want instead. That is really getting that awareness. And then from there, you can start thinking about, well, do I want path A or B or C?
Yeah.
And I always really invite people to be very compassionate with themselves in the process, because
Yeah.
usually when you bump up against I work really hard to get this promotion or to do this thing, and now I'm here and I'm miserable. They don't want to see that, right? And that's where I think I'll see like workaholism behaviors. They rather just bury themselves and not deal with their feelings of discomfort, but the discomfort's good. Think
Yeah.
about like I once
Growing pains.
well, growing pains, but it's like an alarm is being set off.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean if you hear a smoke alarm, it doesn't mean your house is burning down. It might be that you burnt a piece of toast in the kitchen, right? So
Yeah.
can you just get curious that there's an alarm going off and not make it mean something horrific, that it's a terrible fire, but instead kind of investigate, okay, what's going on? Like, why am I feeling this way? And what can I change? What do I want to change?
Yeah. And I know you talk about transformational development. And so can you share with our audience what that is? Because I think many for those in our audience, like I said, I'm a big believer in like the technical skills are becoming table stakes. So, I'm a big believer in helping people transform their lives. And it's what we talked about through this whole episode here is helping people uncover what matters most to them, any issues that they're having and ways that they can resolve them. Can you talk about transformational development for the practitioner, like what they can do, and then maybe some steps in how they can help their clients in their transformations as well?
The number one gift and challenge of transformational leadership is you need to really realize that transform means something's changing.
Yeah.
And where people get stuck is they're over identified to being who they've been, right?
Uh,
I mean, here's an example from my own life that was really hard. Like I was married and I had an identity around that, and
yeah.
society says certain things, and that relationship didn't serve me anymore. And I had to go through the discomfort and transforming into being a divorcee and a co-parent and all the things. And this happens in our professional life. I see people who near retirement, if you're coaching anyone or you have clients near retirement, they'll say they want to retire, but then the closer they get to retirement, they don't know who they are without work. And they
Yeah.
really struggle and they don't actually pass the reins over and all the things. It can be very challenging. And so if you really want to transform, you have to be willing to let go of who you've been for
Yeah.
who you can become. And that's uncomfortable. I'll tell clients, it's like, imagine you're George of the jungle swinging from the vines. Like
Yeah.
you've got to let go of the one vine
Yeah.
to get on to the next one. And then you're like in the free fall. Doesn't
Right.
feel great. And so know that for your own self. But again, if you're helping clients through transformation, in coaching, we talk about how do you meet someone where they're at, like how
Yeah.
do you really understand what's going on for them in a transformation? Maybe it's selling a big asset and maybe it's taking a new risk that they've never done before, of how do you help them to feel safe and secure
Yeah.
in the midst of change? Because all of our, I think, resistance to change is a lack of feeling safe.
Yeah. The fear of the unknown.
And the story we make up about the unknown
Yeah.
versus let me just have a conversation with a part of myself that's scared.
Yeah.
And what does that part of me need?
Yeah. And it's the belief that we have changed, in the past. I interviewed Hal Hirschfield and we were talking about um, the Harvard professor who did a study on people's belief that they don't think they've changed. They don't think they believe they can change in the future, but they believe that they've changed a whole lot in the past. So from age 20 to 30, oh my gosh, I changed so much. Or 30 to 40, I changed so much. But if you're 41 years old, you're like, oh, I think I'm kind of am who I am. This is all I'm going to get. I'm not going to change too much more. So once again, I think it's looking back to see the progress we've made and how far we come and that we have changed in the past that'll give us the confidence knowing that we can go into these unknown aspects of who we are, the identity of who we are, to be able to change into something different, and hopefully that'll lead to a more fulfilling life.
Yeah, well, and because you seem to be a scholar and you've read a lot, I'll drop some scholarly information on you. You're kind of alluding to something called adult development theory, which
Yeah.
actually has a correlation to leadership effectiveness. So in the US, we really understand human development. Like a baby's going to walk around age 1, and then there's a terrible 2s, and then people are teenagers, and that's kind of wild. Like we know that there's these physical milestones and emotional milestones.
Yeah.
And there used to be a belief that everything ended around like age 18. And then I was like, well, the prefrontal cortex doesn't
So it
develop till
develops. Yeah.
25, and
Yeah.
then you can rent a car. But what happens with adult development is there are these predictable stages of growth. But what's different is there's no correlation to IQ and there's no correlation to age. So I could
Yeah.
look at 10, 40-year-olds and they're different.
Yeah.
That's problematic in how we usually promote people in organizational life, which is fees under management, years of
Yeah.
service. That doesn't mean you're developed emotionally,
Emotionally. Yeah.
right? And so in the work that we actually will do 360s that help people measure their leadership effectiveness. and it shows how they score. And of this tool we use, which there's like 2 million data sets, it's pretty popular in leadership development. A lot of the big Fortune 500 companies are using it. But in that, they found that of the 2 million, 70% of people are scoring in the lower level of adult development.
Yeah.
And the concept is we're not developing leaders at the pace we need to be with adaptive change.
Yeah.
And so the work is, how do you help someone to grow in their psychological structure? And you can grow if you choose to grow. It's not that you can't, right? That's why I won't do something like Myers-Briggs anymore. Myers-Briggs, like, I'm an introvert, I'm stuck. That's
right.
it,
That's who I am. That's my identity.
I'm not going to go to a networking event because I took this test years ago. It's like, no, I'm done with those tests. Like, yeah,
Right.
help you have some awareness, but like, they don't help you to grow, and growth is possible.
Yeah. I always say I'm a behavioral financial advisor. I'm in the belief in the behavior business, helping people believe they can do it, and then creating necessary behavior changes to make that life come true here. Now, I know you touched on resilience a little bit there. Can you talk about some of the work that you're doing to help people become more resilient? Because I think what we've been talking about here is the fact that change is tough, that we have changed in the past, and that we have resilience. But I think that you said there maybe is an issue that we're not instilling this into our folks here. Can you kind of talk about resilience, Amber?
I can speak that's always hard because I don't want to talk about clients because it's confidential. So
Yeah.
think about my own experience with resilience. And I put that caveat on there because I don't necessarily want to be like an egomaniac and talk about me.
It's okay.
But I really, frankly, did not have a very good childhood growing up. My dad still is an alcoholic at 82. Like, I had to rescue him out of elder fraud last year. My mom has had mental illness issues. She's not doing well, substance abuse, like all the things. And in my own journey of mental health and getting to know myself, I had to change the narrative inside of my mind. And
Yeah.
the old narrative was like, my mom abandoned me when I was 11 months old because she didn't want to be a mom. And that was hurtful and painful and all the excuses. Or,
Yeah.
my dad, didn't show up to my graduation when I got a master's degree. He's a bad person. And instead, when I reframed it and I said, well, what if my soul chose those parents to be my greatest teachers?
Mm-hmm.
How can I always be learning from them, no matter how challenging it was, right?
Yeah.
And so in ways, a lot of gifts came from it, right? Like,
Yeah.
I didn't get wrapped up in drugs because I saw my mom becoming homeless, right? I decided I'm going to pursue a degree in accounting because I want safety and stability in my life, which has been,
Yeah.
even though I don't do accounting work, like, I know how to run my own business. I know my finances. I could get my data, out of fraud. Like, there's been
Yeah.
a lot of pluses. And so for anyone listening, it's like, I think it's so important to really get to know your story, right? Like, can you excavate the harder memories? Because I think those get stuck and lodged down in you and create dysfunctional behaviors you're not conscious of.
Yeah. Those grooves, those synapses become deep.
Yes, totally. And then realize where your story's your excuse. You know what I mean? Your stories, you're being a victim instead of
Yeah.
you're being empowered by the adversity that you've been faced with. Because life is always going to bring you adversity. Like, I've tried to clean up my life and have no drama, be a good, faithful citizen, be connected to spirit, do great work. And here I was like a year and a half ago, and the person who decided to rip my dad off had been my best friend in high school. Like,
Ugh.
pretty betrayed me. And I'm like, I'm not going to spend a lot of time in I'm mad there's drama, but I'm not going
Yeah.
to go in the drama. I'm just going to fix the problem. And then I'm going to move on with life. And I'm going to be grateful that me and my dad have the closest connected relationship we've had since like I was a little girl.
Yeah.
So to me, that's really resiliency, is being grateful for the gifts and experience, even when they're wildly challenging in the moment.
Yeah. You can reframe those challenges as really truly gifts, and then being grateful I think it frees up so much mental bandwidth to really help you tell a better story, to really live the life that you want. I love this, Amber. This has been awesome. I know we're running up against time here. Do you have anything else that you want to share with our audience that we didn't touch on?
I think just to reach out, if any
Yeah.
bit of this like inspired you, if you're curious about more topics, if you want to just connect, I love the opportunity to come and reach different listeners and have conversations with people like you who are like-minded, because I'm doing
Yeah.
all the same things, beliefs, anything
Yeah.
is possible, build an amazing dream life. And if anyone's, inspired to continue the conversation or learn more, I'd be happy to connect, and they can reach me at amber@conscious.cpa.
Awesome. I'll put that on the show notes. Thank you so much for coming back on, Amber. We're going to have you on for a third time here in the near future.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All opinions expressed by Rob Santos and Rory Henry on this website podcast interview are solely their opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Arrowroot Family Office LLC or their parent company or affiliates, and may have been previously disseminated on television, radio, internet, or another medium. You should not treat any opinion expressed by anyone as a specific inducement to make a particular investment or follow a particular strategy, but only as an expression of their opinions. Past performance is not indicative of future results.